Hi guys, Ash here from the Goodison Blues Supporters Club Ireland. This is a podcast, and also if you want to watch on YouTube, this is streaming on YouTube, our channel as well. And as you can see there in the old title, Everton lose in nightmare fashion. WTF? Would we ever thought we would have seen it again? I actually got it in distant memory of that game that we were up 2-0 against West Ham and ended up losing 3-2. And that wasn't brought up into my mind until nearly every single social media content creator brought up the same thing. Yesterday, they also brought up the same situation about the stat of Sean Dyche and his win record in April. It's absolutely dreadful. It was brought up on TalkSport. It was brought up on any platform you can think of. It was one of the big things that came up. But also just the embarrassment that Everton Football Club find themselves in this situation. Is it worse than, I haven't looked at the stats, but is it worse than, so was it Swindon Town in the earlier years of the Premier League? Swindon Town, I think they have the record of the ones who got relegated in the most time, but did they concede 10 goals in the first 3 games of the Premier League? It remains to be seen. But going back to the start of this game, I thought we might win it comfortably. I was quietly confident that we might get a 2-0 win. That's what I was feeling. And before the game kicked off, the crowd was good. I would like to hear from our members because some of us went over to the game yesterday, and I hope you all had a safe return back this morning, or if you came back directly after. I was quietly confident, and the crowd was noisy right from the start. We were all getting ready for the 9th minute when we're going to have the moment for Kevin Campbell, Super Kev. And I'm going to start with a positive moment leading into a negative moment. And this is something that's gone on for years. This has got nothing to do with Sean Dyche. I've probably mentioned it a million times before in other shows and other episodes on the podcast. But we started off the game, everyone's screaming and shouting, everyone's getting behind the team. It went quiet for a little bit. And then when the 9th minute came in, there was the huge cheer for Super Kev. Super Kev was raining around Goodison Park. And then we really got into it. Really, the game really started opening up from the Everton's point of view. And we had a good few chances to get some goals on the board. But then once it hit the 24th minute, somebody in the comments might be able to tell me why, but click of a finger, slap of a hand, whatever you want to call it, Silent Park hit in. The place went dead. Now, guys like Bunny and that went over to the game yesterday, you might be able to turn around and tell me, why does that happen? Who instigated it? Because this is happening since Roberto Martinez's time. That's how far back this has gone, and why I call it Silent Park. And as I've joked about before, it's not a case of the microphones are suddenly turned off all around Goodison Park. The place just was electric, and once it hit 24 minutes, it went dead. And I can't understand that. But up to that point, our play was really good. Probably some of the best play we have seen from Everton in quite a long time. So it leads me to think, okay, did Sean Dyche come out and say, we're going to play this the usual way? And did the squad say, no, sorry, Gaffer, we're going to do this our way today? He did make a change, bringing in Dive right from the start, which was the correct decision, because as far as I'm concerned, you put him out at 10th in the game yesterday. He was a 9 at minimum. I think the only thing that didn't stop him getting the 10 was the fact that he didn't actually get himself on the score sheet. So everyone really did their I won't go as far as to say their best, but definitely an improvement to warrant what we did have was a very comfortable 2-0 lead up to the 84th to 85th minute. Obviously, then, we've normally scrutinised Sean Dyche over his timings of substitutes, and by that point, you could clearly see that Tim Irabuna, especially him, he was off on his feet. He just couldn't do any more. And his pass completion record was probably so high until that moment that he just couldn't keep it going. Maybe himself, he should have cried more towards the bench to be substituted off because he was tired. But for some reason, Sean Dyche decided to do the Sean Dyche thing. I don't know. Maybe some of us would have said, oh, thank God he's making substitutes now. But the problem was he screwed up the game because he brought on the wrong substitutes. And Dye was having the time of his life. He got a standing ovation from the crowd, and rightly so, when he came off. And he was playing in the 70-odd minute. He was running around that pitch, dictating the play everywhere he was. His heat map must have been just amazing to see on screen. But he didn't. I don't think he would have wanted to come off. He would have stayed on. And he brings on Decore. Then later on, he brings on Beto, taking off Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Dominic Calvert-Lewin didn't need to come off. He was having a good game. He had a lovely goal himself. Then we had the hypocrisy of football, which I always laugh about. We've been slagging off Michael Keane for the last God knows how long because we don't feel he's strong enough and should be a part of the squad. But yeah, he gets a goal yesterday, and everyone in the corner, when he's celebrating the goal, is shouting Keno at him. It's like, we either don't want them in the side or we want them in the side. That's the hypocrisy and the joy of football. So we can comment about it, and then we'll completely turn things the other way and be like so in love with some of our players. So Keane gets the opening goal. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, it's a lovely dink over the goalkeeper to make it 2. And we're quite comfortable. Bournemouth weren't showing any threats whatsoever. I don't recall, anyway, in the first half and going into the second half, don't recall Pickford having to make any saves. He wasn't brought into action at all, so it was a quiet game for him. And everyone seemed to be marshalled very, very well. Some people say that Jack Harrison had another poor game. I thought he did okay. I thought he was, towards the end of the second half, yes, he was tiring. So that's likes of Lister should have been brought on in place of him. But just the substitutes by Sean Dyche yesterday was just wrong. And some people are blaming Dyche, including myself. We're blaming Dyche for the outcome. Some are blaming the players. I will state more of a, if you put it into percentages, it's 80% was Sean Dyche and the other was the players. The players just didn't switch to what Sean Dyche wanted to do, even though Sean Dyche's reasoning and his decisions were wrong. He then comes out and makes the most ridiculous scapegoat, should I say, statement about that as soon as their first goal went in, he could smell something was wrong. Well, then why didn't he act in the correct way? He's supposed to be this so-called defensive style manager that he's able to sniff out these things and react to them when things happen, but he obviously didn't. And he, as far as I'm concerned, he threw that team of players under the bus yesterday. And I was asked yesterday in our WhatsApp group, do I still want them gone? I still do want them gone, even if we had won yesterday, because I think the long-term damage that he's going to cause us is very, very worrying. 3 games now, 10 goals conceded, and without a win. We now have the likes of one of our supposedly relegation candidates with us are now already 5 points clear adrift of us. That's Bournemouth, obviously, with 5 points out of 3 games, and we're sitting with nothing. It's very, very worrying. God knows how the Bournemouth fans were feeling. A lot of them may have left at 2-0 yesterday when the 86 minutes are there and they head off. Then they probably hear the crowd. They go, oh, geez, we got one back. And then they were probably heading on the buses or the coaches or the trains going back, and then not realising until they log on to their Wi-Fi that they had actually won the game. A lot of the Everton fans left at 2-2 as well. I've heard rumours that a lot of people left at 2-1 because once the first goal went in, they were just expecting the worst. Once we were 2-0, went to the bathroom, came back, we were 2-1, couldn't believe it. But I was at that point was still accepting, okay, we're going to hold on at least, and it's more undeserved for Bournemouth, but we held on for a 2-1 win, and then all of a sudden the unthinkable happened. And once that second goal went in, the floodgates opened, and you knew what was going to happen. And Seamus Coleman was tired. Dixon should have been brought on for him. Some people are saying Tarkowski is just not fit and he's not fully fit and ready to play. That might be the case. Michael Keane, I thought he had a decent game yesterday. I thought Tarkowski had a decent game. It's just at that moment in time when we had those goals conceded, we just didn't wake up to it. And I could be wrong in saying this. As I mentioned with the WhatsApp, I was being slated by one or two people and saying, okay, well, this is all about you have to accept comments. And this is why it's called it. Everyone has opinions when it comes to football. You don't have to take them literally. You don't have to take them the way that you want to see them. But we as content creators or fans will look at something and you'll either react to them with emotion. You react to them like I'm not using blind language. You look at Mike from the Blue Boys Network yesterday. He did his quick review video and he was absolutely livid, and he was he slapped his microphone a couple of times because he just was saying, why am I doing this? I should do this when I'm a bit more calmer. And that's all well and good. I just didn't have the time yesterday. I had to get back to sleep before I went back into work, so I just knocked off social media and went straight into snooze land. But now you have more time to reflect on it. I'm still absolutely angry, not just with the players, but really with Sean Dyche. But the problem with this is it's all over. The different content creators saying, okay, is it time for him to go? He has to go. It's time for him to go. All this, in their titles. But the problem is, Sean Dyche is sitting comfortably in the ivory towers there because there's no proper control at the club, and Mashiri is not going to give a shit until he has the club sold and gets the money that he wants. And as long as there's enough games that we are not mathematically relegated, he's not going to do anything about it. If we get into the 15-20 game mark and we're still in a similar position, then he might start doing something. So Sean Dyche knows he's safe, and we now have a 2-week break. And as far as I'm concerned, those that are not going on an international break, him, Dyche, Telwell, they should all be daily in the training grounds and working their arses off and not let up until they come up with some scenario and some state of play. Because going back to what I went off topic there just for a second. The way that we started that game yesterday and played the majority of that game, it didn't look like a Dyche way of playing. There was no balls being just left over the top, trying to find Ndai on the left and trying to find Harrison on the right, which we've been used to watching for the last while. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. The other teams have copped onto that, and unless they make a serious mistake, we're not going to get through that way. So the ball was played a lot on the ground yesterday and was very impressive to see, especially Tim in a room. What a hell of a player we have gotten for 9 million. It's like watching when we got Idrissa Gana Gay for 7 million. It's like and again from Aston Villa, an absolute steal. I thought Idrissa Gay had a very, very good game yesterday. But when he got tired, Garner should have been brought on to stabilise things. Even should have brought on Jake O'Brien to keep that everything all tight at the back. But Sean Dyche decided not to. And when we got to that 86 minutes and he did make that first change, it's like he, whispered into the captain's ear and said, right, lads, I've given you 86 minutes the way you want to play. Now I want you to go and play the Dyche way. I don't know if that's the case or not, but everything changed from that substitute, and God knows what that dressing room was like yesterday. Did they fall out with the manager? Did the manager fall out with players? But I would not have liked to. What do they call the hairdryer treatment? I know that's usually reference to Alex Ferguson, but I would hate to have been in there and to see the way the players reacted to anything that Sean Dyche had to say. Now, I haven't had a chance to look back at the press conference after the game at Everton, so I'll have to look and watch that and see what excuses Sean Dyche comes up with. But from this moment in time, it is now just gone 7 p.m. here on Sunday. Do I want Sean Dyche out? Still 100%. Davian Wise, if you're listening and available, make yourself known, because it's getting to a point now. Aston Villa are going to do us. We have, I think it's Leicester coming up shortly after that, and then Southampton. And as I mentioned in the last show, these are games with a part of the Brighton and the Spurs game. You look at those games coming up. Aston Villa obviously would be a very, very tough game anyway. But when you had the Bournemouth game, You had obviously Doncaster, the League Cup. We came through that very well. You would expect that we could beat Bournemouth. You expect that we could possibly do Leicester away as well, Southampton. So all these kind of games are the potential points that, and against teams that you were expected that you're going to be around that area. So that's no good to us losing those games when those teams are picking up points around us. We've already seen now, as I said, Bournemouth are now 5 points clear. It's still a shock all these hours later. I don't know what happened to the boys over in Liverpool last night. Did they go out and have a few drinks, or did they just come home back to their hotels in shock and awe of what had happened? Because it's truly the Everton way. And I'll end with this point, guys. When you think about it, we always have this thing. I have a be in my bonnet about players getting their first goal for their club. That always happens, or your first goal ever in the Premier League, your first your debut, all that kind of stuff, and it always seems to come against Everton. But it was on the slight flip side yesterday, but typically in Everton fashion. I didn't realize this until I heard the stats, because I thought he played a lot more games. Michael Keane yesterday, it was his 200th appearance for Everton, and he gets a goal. Next up was Dominic Calvert-Lewin, his 250th appearance for Everton, and he gets a goal. And you're thinking, oh, that's well and good. Brilliant. Great stat to have on a day like this. But then in typically Everton fashion, we go and lose the game 3-2. Only Everton could do that. And it's the brunt we have to take when we are Everton fans. Unfortunately, now, I haven't seen them yet, but I know they're going to come up. We're going to have memes all done up about the game. We're going to have that cartoon crowd 442. They're going to do a cartoon about it. Paddy Power are bound to do a video on it, and we're going to have to live this memory for quite some time. So the international break is on, guys. So we'll take a break from the podcast and the video content just in the meantime, and I will be back at some point when everything gets settled down with a preview to the Villa game. So, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. As I said, if you're listening on Spotify, thanks again. You can also watch this episode on YouTube, our YouTube channel. Just search Goodison Blues. Until then, guys, thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you again in the very, very near future. Take care.